Sweet. All right. Here we are back again. Adam, thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
And today we're just going to dive right back in. We're going to talk kind of beginning this segment on leaving a relationship when you finally get to that point where you're like, this is no longer where I should be. And you make that step and you're stepping out into what to me felt like a really scary place and not an easy step to take because it's always complicated. It doesn't matter what situation you're in.
Yeah.
If you're like, okay, I think it's time for me to leave, all the moving parts and all the moving pieces that it takes to make that happen. And then if you add kids to the mix, even more complicated.
And I think what you're highlighting here is we have to leave room for, guess what? The experience is not going to be exactly how I imagine it. And people can take that many different ways, but like, even if you've game planned, even if you have put your resources in place, you have reached out to others, you have a game plan, we have to remember that it might not go exactly how I have game planned. But just because different challenges pop up in that mix doesn't mean that I have to abandon my plan.
Yeah, for sure. It's takes a little bit of an ability to kind of roll with the punches or go with the flow, but that's something that someone who's been in a relationship like this is probably really good at because they've had to do that a lot. And that's a skill that they've developed. So we could do that. I know for me, I made a plan. I had I remember when that first thought went through my mind of like, okay, I know that that's the decision that I have to make. It wasn't that I left in that moment. And not that that's necessarily not an option for somebody. That there might be a situation where that is what's needed. But for me, it was Christmas time, like I mentioned earlier on. And I didn't want my kids to remember Christmas as being the time that their folks broke up. So even though in my mind I had made that choice, I didn't make that action until a little bit after Christmas. And did, like you said, kind of set up. I talked to a few people that I knew could be a support, not only for me, but also for my spouse, because I knew that this was going to be a difficult thing for him.
Yeah.
And he had plenty of struggles that made me concerned for how he might respond. So I had let some people know that could be a support for him during that period of time and made that plan probably 4 weeks ahead before I actually finally left.
Yeah.
But, it's going to look different for everybody. And like you said, that plan did change. Even though I left technically at that point, there was so much that happened before that relationship was actually dissolved. And many of those things I never saw coming and couldn't have anticipated. Different responses from family members and things that I was asked to do. I had, people that wanted to try to see the marriage still work and wanted me to go through that therapy that we had talked about and try to see if it was going to be possible. That was not something that I foresaw, but I had to wade through it in the way I felt was best in the moment.
Yeah.
With that end goal still always in mind. So I like the way that you said that. It doesn't always go the way you would anticipate, because that was my experience too.
Well, I've sat with a lot of individuals who have like sort of told me about their attempts at leaving. And many times it came to what seemed like in that moment, like, oh, I didn't prepare for that. So now I have to go back and I have to prepare more and I have to plan more. And I'm going to plan to a point where like, oh, I'm not going to have any surprises. Well, it's not going to go perfectly. No. Even in when we decide we're going, like you said, there's so many emotions that are involved in many different areas, not only for the person we're leaving, but for ourselves. And then you bring in children as well. Like we have to stay committed to what we know is actually the best thing to do, because you're going to have moments where your kids are going to be in tears. What are we doing? Why are we doing this? And if we stay in the moment of like what those emotions are in those moments, then we'll always make the justification that we shouldn't protect ourselves and protect our children. Well, because there's tears, and we lie to ourselves that those tears aren't also present when we stay.
Right. Yeah. And that's just that survival mode playing out in real time in the moment. It's difficult to have that foresight when you're in survival mode. And those types of situations where somebody's upset or your kids are crying or those types of things, those are what trigger that innate, like, oh, I've got to fix this. And we tunnel vision into this moment. How do I make this moment okay? How do I survive this moment? And that is where I think a lot of that, I just got to placate for the right now instead of focusing on that long-term plan that's going to resolve these problems completely.
Absolutely.
And that kind of actually plays into something that I messaged you this week and said, help me remember, I have this thing I want to share. And look, I actually remembered. So I had been talking with my mom, and we were talking about how my personal experience with just learning how to communicate with people, because communication is so difficult for me. And looking back at that situation and realizing that I just kept how I was feeling and what I was thinking and what I needed to myself for so long, trying to make sure, because if I did that, then everything would be sort of okay, right? Manageable enough to where I was like, this is acceptable. As long as I'm completely stifled, this situation is acceptable. And we were talking about how if a relationship is only kept safe for you, if you are completely stifling yourself or having to not say what you're really thinking or not do something that you want to do, as long as it's, obviously kind and realistic. If you're having to completely stifle yourself in order to maintain a safe environment, that is not a safe environment. Even if it's safe while you're completely stifling yourself, it's still not a safe environment. And that's what I did not recognize. I felt like I can change who I am to keep this environment safe, but it's still not a safe environment. And if I had recognized that or had been able to verbalize or express my thoughts earlier and allowed the natural events to progress the way they would have, I may have felt like I could leave earlier. It may have saved me and my children some of the struggle that we went through if I had been honest about what I was thinking and what I needed and what I felt. And I think that applies in that leaving situation as well. And we have to be able to be honest about what we're thinking and feeling and needing. And if it's not safe and you have to, pretend to be something you're not, or not say something that you feel, it's time to go. And that was something that I kind of realized the impact of just recently.
It's almost, man, you just so eloquently put that, because I've seen that as a therapist. Because what ends up happening is, I imagine, like, as we move through this process with someone who is being abusive, it's almost like they're actively in the relationship putting their hand over our mouth so that we are silenced. And then what's crazy is when we wake up to the fact that sometimes we've put our own hand over our mouth.
Yeah.
Like, oh, wait a second. I found justifications or reasons to not listen to my heart, to tell myself, oh, why don't we make us smaller? And I think this comes back to when you do domestic violence trainings, there's something called Seeking Safety. There's a whole curriculum on that. And the reason why it came out is the Seeking Safety curriculum is based around just our like instinctual needs. So our instincts are always trying to find harmony, believe it or not. A lot of times we're like, as human beings, we are like just the manifestors of chaos. But what's interesting is our chaos is normally projected into our desire to seek safety. Like we're trying to control something or make some situation to our ability what we think is going to be good for us. But when we really go through that process of seeking safety, then the whole crux of the modality is actually focusing on when are you going to actually trust your nerve endings?
Yeah.
Like if you burned your hand, would you tell your hand that it wasn't strong enough? Would you, oh, I'm not feeling that. Now imagine emotionally how often you do that. You're Emotional thermometer is saying it's hot, hot, hot. And you're telling yourself, oh, it's not that bad.
Mm-hmm.
Like I have these morsels to sustain me, either my expectations or my hopes of what could be if this person would join me in that.
Yeah. And I think, like you were saying before, we know that that hand is going to come to cover our mouth and silence us. So instead of waiting for that to happen, we do it to ourselves because it's easier to accept that from us. And it's like, oh, this is the natural course of events. I'd rather have that control myself.
Well, and I think that this would be a great reflection point for people who are listening. I would want you to like go back to episode 1, and just a thought process that's coming to my head is when you were talking about these moments that you came to accept, like not putting myself on the radar. Like you started to try to anticipate what his needs were and what he would need so that when he would come home, there wouldn't be anything to fight about. And how much energy did you put into, oh, I'll create this space? And then it was something new that evening.
Oh yeah.
Something
it
else
didn't matter.
Yeah.
Didn't matter how much time or effort I put into it. There would always be something. There would always be something.
Yeah. Well, misery is a perpetually hungry child. Like you can't console misery because enough is never there.
Right.
It will want more and more. And that's not a position of hopelessness. Once we understand there was nothing you could do to meet his need in that, then we empower you to start going, well, what are my needs?
Right. Yeah.
Like I can't give you the oxygen from my chest. I need it for me.
Right. Yeah. And that goes right into taking care of your needs, which is kind of the next step in this process we wanted to talk about. And I know we talked about this earlier too. When I left, because I was a mother, instead of shifting that focus away from him, now I shift into myself and taking care of my needs, which needed to happen because it had been neglected so long. I just took all of that and focused it right onto my kids, which was also important, right? They needed a lot in that time. They needed a lot of support. It was difficult for them as well, and they had been through a lot too. So naturally, they needed a lot of care, but in that space, I didn't create any room for myself. And I look back at that, and if I would have understood what that meant, I would have done it so differently. But hindsight's 2020.
Oof. I mean, there's just so many emotions that hit when you bring that up. Of like, first of all, we have to go back to the person in this situation. How long did you make it an active belief to not take care of your needs? Like when you actually left, how old were the girls?
They were 3 and 4.
Okay. So all in, how many years had you been in this relationship?
7.
7. So for 7 years, you had actively moved into like this routine of your needs didn't matter. And then I'm asking you to do the impossible task. 7 years of reinforcement that now I mean, this is where I hold a ton of empathy for individuals that choose, no, this is my never again. I'm not going to experience this. Is we're going to ask for you to do the impossible task. We're going to ask that after all this reinforcement, after you developing all the skills of essentially making yourself small, now we're going to ask you, put yourself first. What a foreign concept.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And that has been a wild ride figuring that out. It took me way longer, I think, too, to realize that needed to happen, because I had this weird idea that I know I've probably heard it somewhere, you know, they say time heals all wounds, right?
Yeah.
So in my mind, I thought, okay, it's just time. This is going to get easier with time. And I thought, you know, I ended up
You just like
married.
Started the clock and you're like,
I was
right,
like, okay, it's been 7 years of this. Like, it's going to take probably at least 7 years and then I'll feel fine, right? It'll be
just
okay.
Like wake up and your subscription to Misery has been canceled. Perfect.
Exactly.
Wonderful.
Exactly. That was my like pipe dream. And I remember telling myself, like, and even my husband from the very beginning, I was like, you know what? our 8th anniversary is, I'm so looking forward to our 8th anniversary, because in 8 years, I will have been married longer to somebody who loves me than I was to somebody who didn't. And I figured that that was just going to be my magical year. It was 8 years. And honestly, it was kind of the point where I finally realized I have so much work to do and really started digging in. I mean, it took me a long time to realize how much just work I needed, work on myself and time understanding myself and healing. And it kind of started at that point. And maybe if I hadn't had that time thing on my radar, I could have started that earlier.
I think it's the way that we naturally also conceptualize work. Because like we think, oh, that's going to be hard. We don't think about how rewarding it is. Like, Lindsay, I know you've had to have had breakthrough moments with your therapist of like realizing you reclaim a part of yourself. Like it's almost like you walk through a field and you find like, what is this doing here? There's at one point in time you told yourself you didn't need that part.
Yeah.
And you left it here. And what's it feel like to click that back into place? Oh, like I have new emotions, I have new feelings. But does it feel better or worse to have it now? Well, it feels better. I look at myself and I look more whole when I conceptualize myself. Like probably the hardest thing in the take care of your needs section here is I want whoever's listening to this to realize that you're going to experience grief, and that grief is not going to make sense. You're going to pack up the car. You're going to drive away. You're going to find yourself walking in the door somewhere to open arms that's wanting to support you. And you are going to be grieving a relationship. There's going to be parts of you that are going to start thinking like, well, maybe this was enough. Like, or, oh, well, like maybe I didn't give them enough time to change. Like, I think that's the most surprising part. And that's why I talk about like, this is not going to go completely your way. Because sometimes your plan did work perfectly. You got out. And then you're sitting here with the complexity of grief. And many times where our grief goes is in the unhealthy way. We go into how we could have fixed them. Once again, we've spent 7, 10, 15 years. It doesn't work that way. But the grief can go into the positive, like, I actually do need to grieve this relationship because I had hopes, dreams, and aspirations as well. Like when I said I do, when I walked down the aisle, when I held our first child, when I like just fill in the blank, you had a hope and a dream. And it's okay for you to sit here and say, this isn't what I wanted. And I never wanted to be divorced. I never wanted to be separated. I didn't want to have 2 homes to raise children. And that's perfectly fine to say. But let yourself grieve, because this is where that like our own hand comes over our mouth. We tell ourselves, well, you can't feel that way, or you shouldn't think that way, or why are you being selfish, or focus on the girls, focus on your boys, whatever it is. You're going to find a way to, that person has stepped out of your life, but you have preserved their voice in your head.
Yeah. And that's a really easy thing to do for sure. And I think, you can almost can blame yourself. There can be a lot of blame. Like, this was my choice. I chose this. And I think that was something that was really difficult for me. Like, it comes up after you've left. Those types of things come when you least expect them. Maybe, so I noticed, like, for me, and this might carry over even into some of the survival mode PTSD section that we're going to touch on. But it would be in moments like where I'd picked the kids up from their dads and I was driving home, and the kids would say in the car, like, Mom, why do we have to do this? Why? I don't like having to drive back and forth. And I don't, why did you leave? And those types of things, giving that feeling of guilt. And then maybe even places that you might go to that you used to go to as a family, and now you're going there as a single person. The most random times that you don't expect it is when oftentimes those types of feelings hit.
Yeah. I mean,
Um,
well, and again, are you going to be willing to give yourself grace in those moments? You know, I remember working with one client that, their first experience back to a church
mm,
as a divorced person, she said, I walked in, I sat down, we got through worship, and then she just started bawling.
mm,
And she was in her car now, frustrated. Why, like, I shouldn't be feeling, and that's something I always work with is the shoulds. We will never work from shame in therapy. Like as soon as should comes out, you should just replace it with shame because that's what you're doing to yourself.
mm,
And it was this space of being like, no, I didn't actively choose to be sitting here as a divorced woman. This isn't my desire, but I wasn't also willing to not be a living woman. That's
mhm.
not what I'm willing. So there's gonna be moments where you're gonna like attempt to do something like you said, going somewhere you used to go as a family and realizing, I don't know if I'm all the way ready for that.
Yeah.
There's still power in being able to pivot in that moment.
Yeah. And I think what I've learned through the last few years of trying to help myself heal is that those moments are actually really important because
Mm,
they give us an opportunity to really feel something that's real, that's stored, that's inside of us from the experience that we've had. And I don't know if this is the case for everyone, but I know for me it's really difficult for me to access those emotions sometimes.
yeah.
I was so good at pushing them aside and not allowing them to be present that it's not an easy thing for me to access them. So when they become available to me, it's an opportunity to
Mm,
let myself actually feel those emotions and accept what they mean and come to terms with them in my mind. And it takes some of that power away from them. And it almost gives me back
mm,
that experience that was I was living it, but I wasn't experiencing it. And it gives me that back, even though it's painful, it really is mine.
mm.
And I did experience it and it is real. And for me to actually be able to experience it and accept it and sit with it and then move past it is powerful.
It's powerful because that's you're essentially saying, Adam, I'm starting to define my voice again.
Yeah. The
Like it.
reality of what I've been through and where I've been.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Being able to accept it and truly experience it. Because when you're shoving it aside and being what you need to be in the moment, you don't actually experience it. It's not felt by you
No.
and processed. And that
Well,
is just
very
stored.
rarely can it be a resource for our own growth. If I don't recognize it exists, how can I use it as a tool then?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like it's interesting. I've been doing some work with somatics and it's all about your nervous
Mm,
system regulation and
yeah.
understanding, how your nervous system works. And so many experiences get stored in our
Mm-hmm.
bodies and not processed. And then it can really impact the way that we respond to our things that are happening around us day to day, but we may respond to them
Mm,
from what was happening in the past versus what's actually happening now. So maybe back in my first relationship, when I broke a dish on the floor, maybe that was a experience where I might feel fear.
yes.
Whereas now, if I break a dish on the floor and I feel fear, it doesn't fit the context because there's no reason for fear here.
Mm-hmm.
But my body still remembers it and stored it as something that initiates fear. And so
Mm-hmm.
working through that and understanding how to teach ourselves, oh, I don't have to be afraid of this thing anymore because I'm safe and this environment is safe. Those types of situations can be helpful for that. They show us those stored memories, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I've always said that when we bring in a somatic process, what we are really talking about is if we were to imagine life as a big old puzzle, and let's say I handed you a puzzle and said, please solve this, and there's 3,000 pieces, but you open up, you pour it out, and you're like, the box says 3,000 pieces, but there's 3,030 pieces in here. the somatic experiences that we've had is the moments we've taken puzzle pieces from a different puzzle and brought them with us.
Mhm.
So now imagine as you're assembling that, you could maybe make one of those pieces fit, but you'd have to destroy the puzzle to do so.
Mhm.
And there's actually being able to sit back and say, I know that one doesn't fit.
Yeah.
And that's that moment for you where you're like, wait a second, I want to react in fear, but there's not a need for that. And what should I do? Maybe it is the laugh. Goodness gracious, how did I drop that dish? Or like, and it's difficult because we have to be purposeful in it, of going, I can choose what would seem to be easy, which is to react through that guttural response, or I can recognize that's not my puzzle piece.
Mhm.
That doesn't have a place in my life anymore. So what am I going to role model to my kids? Fear, scarcity, anger, or am I going to move into the abundance of like, we make mistakes, things happen, laugh it off, clean things up, nothing's really broken. I mean,
Right.
that's the reality of life that we're always living. And so I hope that through listening to us break Lindsay's story down, you're constantly reminded in this process there's always options, even when you're unwilling to see them.
Mhm.
And there's going to be moments where you're going to say, I don't have options. And what you may actually need to start digesting is, I'm not ready to accept
Mhm.
what these other options are.
Yeah, for sure. I had lots of different choices I could have made, but in my
Mm,
mind, I ran all those through a filter, and it
yeah.
always came back to, nope, I got to stay because these
Mm,
things didn't get checked off. And a lot of times it's really difficult in those moments to see outside those filters that we have.
mhm.
But yeah, hopefully that this can help people recognize that maybe there's a perspective shift that could
Yep.
happen and it could actually be beneficial down the line. But a lot of that, what we're talking about, it really is, it's being cognizant and paying attention to what's going on within yourself. And when you've been in
Mm,
survival mode for a really long time, you're very disconnected with yourself, your own body, your own mind, your own responses. You're good at controlling the outward, but the
mm,
inward is very distant and difficult to recognize what's happening. So
yeah.
prioritizing paying attention to that is a big beginning step of working on processing through a lot of those things and helping yourself.
And a little intervention that you can use in this is, rarely do we ever have the intentionality of scaling what our days are like. Because that's the issue, is when we're used to experiencing what I would say is chronic trauma, we normally get into this mode of like, well, the days aren't that bad. Because we've actually set like this persistent depressive scale. So all of a sudden, I'm not looking for 7 and 8s out of 10s for my days. I'm going, what was a 4?
Mm-hmm.
Or he didn't hit me, or nothing was broken, or the screaming wasn't that bad. And for us to then start there and scale, that's a good way of waking us up of like, wait a second, why am I not looking for something above a 7 out of 10? Or
Right.
what was the highlight of my day? If the highlight of my day was actually not an inappropriate action towards myself by another person, then I might be looking at the wrong scale. Because how do we build that awareness? That's the struggle. Because I think that when you have people that really truly want to help you, when they can see that you're in distress, um, they can be a little cold in it. They're like, you can't see this? Like,
Mm-hmm.
this is crazy. And what happens is, I know that you are coming from a position of, I'm watching my friend be consumed in this experience. And so I'm fighting for her life. But what she's hearing in this is shame, projection, another thing I'm failing at, something I can't do for my kids. Like, she's not hearing, I'm fighting for you. But
Right.
being able to come alongside and be like, well, let's just build awarenesses. Like, how can we suggest that? What does that look like? Because I know that we're jumping back a little bit, but when you're talking about like the leaving of the relationship and taking care of your needs, something that I did when I was working with, my first, basically my first 1,800 hours was cutting my teeth with victims of sexual abuse.
Mm.
So I was I was constantly working with individuals that some way, shape, or form domestic violence was probably also present.
Mm-hmm.
And when we would get to the spot of like either challenging their oppressor or trying to leave or trying to stay consistent to a plan that was good for them, I had this thing of like, I think it's time to write your Declaration of Independence. And I know it sounds stupid,
No, I like
but
that.
it was like, you know what? You need to write a letter for yourself. Like, why am I doing the things I do? Because once it's on paper and I'm reading it, it's different than when it's in my head. When
Mm-hmm.
it's in my head and I'm in a defense situation of like my own defense mechanisms, I will probably forget the reasons why I'm doing this.
Yeah.
And then I'm desiring to seek safety in those moments. I want harmony. So, you know what? I was so stupid. Let me meet your need. And then, oh, the storm passes by. But once I say, these are the things that I'm doing, you may surprise yourself that your past self may write to you in a journal or something along those lines and be exactly what you need in the present to hear. I'm not going back to that.
Yeah. Yeah, it needs something outside of that voice. Your mind is full of their voice. And when you have what your action plan is and your reasons, and they're just sitting in there being mixed together with all of, the person that you need to leave voices, that makes total sense how having it written down on a piece of paper would make it a lot easier for them to be able to have that clarity.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about, we've been talking throughout this whole thing kind of on survival mode because it really kicked in pretty early on in my situation. And then let's talk a little bit about PTSD. I don't know if I'm sure you have background in that.
Mm-hmm.
I know that was something that kind of came up for me, and I didn't know. When I heard PTSD, all I thought about was veterans, that come.
Isn't that so funny?
Yeah. Well, and my husband now is a veteran, and, being a part of the veteran community, it just made sense that was a veteran related thing. But the more that I started recognizing that I needed to start working on some of these things that I'd been through and processing them and trying to help myself, it became more and more apparent that I think this is something that I'm struggling with. And some of the different symptoms that I saw in the veteran community, I resonated with, but in a different way. So why don't you give a little bit of a background? I'm sure a lot of people understand what that looks like, but kind of give an explanation of what that is.
Absolutely. So with post-traumatic stress disorder, a lot of times we think about it directly to veterans because it's something that most of Americans can relate to because in one way, shape, or form, we have been connected to a veteran. Like whether it's your grandfather, your father, your brother, your sister, your mother, like one way or another, I forget what it is, but there's like, it's not even 3 degrees of separation. Mm-hmm. We have had one veteran within 2 or 3 generations easily. And so we understand sort of through that experiential component of like, oh, I've seen that person sullen or whatnot. And so that's why we always jump to that conclusion. I think there's also a need for us to downplay that PTSD is probably something that everyone has. And
I wouldn't argue with that.
When I say that, a lot of people go like, no, I had a really good life. And that's normally, I if you ever want to know when your therapist chuckles, it's normally when you say, that's not me. Like, I don't have any of that. And it's like, well, we didn't bring it up because we're idiots. We probably we're feeling it in the room here. Because let's just break down the word. It has trauma in it, traumatic. None of us will escape this life without having experienced trauma. And the quicker we are to move into accepting that trauma is a human experience, I think that speeds up the process to then implementing the repair and the healing behind it.
Mm-hmm. Amen. That's awesome.
So I love the experiential component of it because I think this also puts it in greater perspective of like PTSD. I want you to think of it as if it was attached to your senses because it is actually rooted in your senses. So if you have ever experienced certain sights, smells, temperature, um, feelings, tastes that all of a sudden elicit a response,
Mm.
that is a form of PTSD. I remember just talking to another therapist that again was wrestling with the idea. We were in school at this time, wrestling with the idea, do I have PTSD? Like and in many ways she had a wonderful life, right? But then we were really talking, and it somehow we got on the conversation. She's like, I'm absolutely afraid of airplanes. I was like, absolutely afraid of airplanes? You've been all over the place. And then she just like, it just fell out. She's like, oh, I was on this one airplane that was coming back from Jamaica, and there was I gave it away, but there was turbulence so bad that the drink cart in front of me hit the ceiling
Oh
and
my gosh.
then hit the stewardess, and the stewardess was sitting next to me for the rest of the flight till we could get to the emergency landing because she was knocked out.
Oh my gosh.
And I was like, is that the last time you were on an airplane? And she's like, yeah, that was the last time I was on an airplane. It's like, you do know that might be a PTSD response of like when I see airplanes, I feel anxiety. Like she was talking about picking her husband up at the airport was an anxious process for her. And she
Mm.
couldn't understand, why am I so anxious? But like seeing the word LAX was like, ugh.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, these are those instances of like we start to sort of abdicate our responsibility and like diminish our own power in certain ways because we're like, oh, I can drive around that. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
just won't go to airports. Or I don't like to go out at certain hours. Or I don't go back to that same restaurant or that same grocery store because an experience happened around there.
Mm-hmm.
PTSD is around us in more ways than we really realize or willing to accept. And that sadly, we end up in situations where when I see this going to an extent that there's really like functional daily functional capabilities have been diminished greatly, is these are your hoarders. These are these individuals that don't have relationships. They just stay at home.
Mm-hmm.
Agoraphobia is the fear of being outside, but largely it's most likely a PTSD side effect, right?
Mm-hmm.
We get used to giving up more influence in our daily lives and accepting less of ourselves.
Yeah.
So I'll never forget a family I was working with that the mother and one of the children had experienced domestic violence, very abusive relationship. Um, their offender in this regard had passed away before, but I'll never forget they were talking about, here we are, I'm remarried, my child has siblings now, we're enjoying it, and there was a table at this Chinese restaurant that became very loud and combative that was
Mm-hmm.
across the room. But one person yelled in a certain way. And my client said she went into freeze and her son went into freeze.
Mm-hmm.
And then both of them were able to relate an experience of like, we could tell that the people at the table were trying to like, what's wrong? What's going on? And they were gone, right?
Mm-hmm.
Disassociated. And that's a PTSD response. For
Yeah.
them, it was a sound that, like, boom, I'm in it. Like, and they're back to, oh, wow. I mean, we're talking about years of healing, of good
Mm-hmm.
stuff, and then it can snap you back. And that's where I talk about that grace side, is we are going to have to create space for ourselves and saying, I still can have flashbacks. I
Mm-hmm.
can still have moments where I'm going to become tense. Or even in like conversations I've had with people where they say, maybe I was in a relationship where my, offender was extremely verbally damaging, and there was a lot of verbal abuse that was hurled at me. And here I am in a new relationship, and I'm finding myself being the one that raises the voice.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times people go, well, wait a second, I don't want to be the villain in my own story. How did I get here? And it's like, I think it's because you're pushing past PTSD responses. You have a person in front of you that wishes to have that connection, I'm assuming,
Mhm.
and you're trying to have a conversation where maybe conflict is present, but it's not an argument. It doesn't have to be a fight to the death, but you are used to those conversations being a one of us has to win, and I
Mm.
am no longer losing.
Right.
So I will use everything I have, even when I realize it may actually damage the thing I love so much.
Mm. When I finally started finding my voice again, I will say it feels like you're like a toddler who's learning how to walk. It's like, I know I'm, 36 years old and I should know how to communicate and
Mm-hmm.
in a situation, but I am like a 5-year-old trying to figure this out because I have no experience. And it feels so awkward, and I'm pushing against what everything that my body's telling me to do
Yes.
right now. It's like my body's telling me, shut up, don't say this, what's going to happen. You have all these things in your mind like, oh, you should not be doing this, but I know I need to. So I'm going to push myself to do it, and it comes out clumsy. It comes out not at all the way that I would like it to, but it got out. And every time that I push myself to do that, it gets easier and easier. And I recognize, okay, nothing happened. It wasn't a bad experience. All those things my body was telling me that were going to
Yeah.
happen didn't happen, and it's okay. But yeah, I think it can be awkward when you're not used to doing it.
I mean, I feel like one of the best ways of like a little assignment I have when I'm going through like trying to build awareness to PTSD with my clients is I love the movie Inside Out.
Oh, I don't think I've seen. Oh, that's the one with all the emotions. Yeah, I
All
haven't
the
seen it.
emotions.
My kiddos
Oh
love that
my
movie.
gosh. You have to,
I
Lindsay.
need
Oh
to.
my goodness. Well, because it's going to put it in what I say is like a visual metaphor, right?
Mm.
Because you literally can hear the emotions talking about past experiences where doing so such and such didn't work out.
Oh.
And so you have this like there are these parts of you because I love when I'm doing therapy with people, I do something called internal family systems because we talk about the fact that there's multiple parts of ourselves that we're activating every day. Our desire is to get into a role that's called the observer, which is I can sit amongst all my different parts and then make informed decisions with all of their inputs.
Mm.
Where essentially the breakdown is if I'm only being activated and I'm only allowing myself to be actionable in just one part at a time, I don't have a fully formed thought process and what would be a healthy response.
Mm.
And
That makes
so
total sense. And then you
you'll,
probably find yourself in conflict with yourself
oh yeah,
all the time.
absolutely. I mean, it it was eye-opening for me because it was actually in my own therapy. It helped me come to understand that I had limited myself to like there's a period of time in my life where I was literally a hammer, everything else was a nail, right?
Mm.
Like it was something that was easy for me. I'm 6'6". At one period of time I was really fit. And so I was like, I was used to using an intimidated a physical presence as my way of controlling the world and the environment around me.
Mm.
The challenge in that is that I was also a person who was craving healthy relationships. But you can't have healthy relationships if you're activated primarily out of imposing your will on others.
Mm. Yeah.
I was thinking that by getting absolute obedience out of people around me, that would bring me intimacy. And what it brought me was more frustration.
Mm.
I had to own that. And so realizing that so I'm going to run through the modality real quick because I think it'll be helpful.
Okay.
So this is called the Brazilian model of IFS, of internal family systems, which recognizes that there's 4 active parts that we all work out of. One part is called your sage. This is what you believe your truth to be. You use your sage when information comes in. It is the thing that sorts through what is truth in this, how does it apply to myself. Another part of yourself is called the warrior. This is the side that has had to defend yourself. This is the side that, come on, when we're strapping boots on and we're going and hunting something, we use our warrior side. This is our instinctual, I'm going to defend, I'm going to hunt, gather, this is me. The what we would call the basement of these four, so something that's beneath the level, is called the kid. The kid in you is spontaneity, it is lightheartedness, it's also impulsiveness. These are the times where you're like, man, I made that decision and here I am, like a grown woman or man, and I felt like I acted like a 3 or 4-year-old. You want to know why? Because emotionally you have an inner child within yourself. How are you utilizing that? The fourth, and what we would call like the top framework of this, would be what's either called the king or the queen. This is the person that blesses people with their presence. Like when people go, "Oh, Lindsay, it's so good to be around you. I love this part about you." They're seeing that queen. They're seeing that blessing, right? Now, if we were to draw a circle in the middle of all of this, there would be something called the observer. That's the one that's taking in all four of them before we become actionable. What I could see in my life is there's moments where I'm only activating from the warrior. The warrior is who I need to be. Everything is hunting. Everything is fighting. Everything is defensive. Everything has to be offensive, whatever it is, purely the warrior. When I'm activated out of the warrior, do I care about truth? Do I know what the truth of the situation is? When I'm activated out of the warrior, am I blessing people with who I'm presenting as? Like, these are the situations we have to sit down and break apart and go, wait a second, I don't know what truth is. A lot of times when I start coaching or therapy, sometimes people are rooted 100% in their sage. They're so fixated on like the most pure form of truth that they're not willing to let their emotions in. They're not willing to talk to that spontaneous side. They don't know if they can defend themselves because they don't know if the justification is in the information that they're getting. They're certainly not blessing people because most of the time this purely sage processing becomes extremely cynical about everything.
Yeah,
and we just like sense. we just suck it out, right? Because in our pursuit of pure truth, we are not looking at the fact that I'm still a much more dynamic individual. We'll also see these are the individuals that they really enjoy their intelligence. Their intelligence becomes everything. Me being able to be smarter than everyone feels great. Yeah, but then I also feel so lonely because no one's here on my pedestal with me. Right?
Isolated.
I'm very isolated. So these I've also walked us through without probably being intentional, but it just fell into place of like, these are PTSD responses. If I am only activated in certain areas of myself, most likely I do not have a full awareness of the situation. That's why I'm going fight or flight. This is why I'm avoiding or withdrawing, because I'm not actually taking in the complexity of the situation that's in front of me.
It's all connected, right?
It's all connected.
All connected. Your health too, like all of these internal things,
oh my goodness,
they just manifest physically so much. And that's where like kind of the whole point of this episode and this segment is that you mentioned it at the beginning. Just because we finally get out doesn't mean it's over, because those effects carry on and they show up in these ways, these emotional and mental struggles that we might face, and the way that we relate with people, having been tied back to the patterns that we developed during that relationship. And then they can manifest physically too. And we can start to see them show up with different illnesses and a lot of different stress responses in the body. So yeah, it's amazing how it's all connected.
The real shocker in life is realizing how much we are always communicating with ourselves if we're willing to look at it. And this is a trouble that we're running into from a societal standpoint, is we have become so technologically advanced in the pharmaceuticals that we can create that we have found ways to mitigate our own natural responses to how our emotions are. And I'm
Yeah.
not even talking about psychopharmaceuticals. I'm talking about people are like, oh, well, I get ulcers and I have stomach aches.
Mhm.
Trauma. Like there's some. Like, oh no, it's an ulcer. I take this medication. Like, ulcers don't just naturally appear. Oh, there's a long history of
Trauma.
intergenerational transmission of trauma. Like, so like you have a
Yeah.
long history of carrying this shit till your body explodes. Like, there's
Yes.
like,
Yes.
let's
Exactly.
be honest. And I'm not trying to make a joke out of it, but we need to bring in the thought process of, do I really need a pill for that? Is that my body telling me something? You
Hmm.
know, I
Yeah.
can I can tell when I'm normally under more stress. Um, I have had lifelong psoriasis.
Mm.
And what I've noticed in the last 2 years is that like your body always changes. Like every 7 years, your body changes. So in these last 7 years, what I've noticed is that when my stress response goes through the ceiling, my rheumatoid arthritis
Mm.
fires up.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget I love one of my doctors. One of my doctors, oh, well, there's this awesome medication and we'll just pump this through you. I was like, but how does it fire up and then stop? How does it fire up and stop? And so I started doing my own scaling exercise and I was realizing like, oh, I'm actually throwing an incredible amount of stress on myself in different areas of my life. I'm not being present with myself where a self care and my things that I need to do for myself, and my body's responding to it.
Hmm.
It's not so much that I'm having an autoimmune response to this, to my body saying, we don't have the resources to keep everything quiet.
Hmm.
We're burning them up in different areas. Can you help?
Yeah.
Because I don't think that in any case, when it comes to our body, the idea is, well, I'll add a pill and then I'll subtract more of my self care. I'll subtract
Yes.
more of eating healthy. I'll subtract my exercise. No, there's nothing that's going to make up for the fact that we need to be in tune with our bodies.
Yeah. No, it's been really interesting working with clients. Um, and when they come in, I have a lot of people I work with that have autoimmune issues because I
Mm,
have a history of autoimmune, and I like working with people who are struggling with that because
hmm
I understand it very well. And I haven't found someone that I've worked with that has a autoimmune disease and doesn't have a very notable past trauma history. And it just
Yeah.
goes hand in hand. And it's not always obvious to them in the moment, but it's that long-term stress on the body,
Mm,
and it just manifests that way very often. It's not uncommon at all. And then that was my experience, and it can manifest in a lot of different ways. Stress is really hard on your heart. It's hard on, there's so many
yep.
ways that it can pop up. Your digestive system is a huge one. um but yeah,
Have you ever heard of the ACEs study?
yes, yes,
Adverse childhood experiences.
yes.
So this goes hand in hand with what we're talking about. You're literally talking about the fact that we as human beings have the ability to move ourselves outside of being a statistic when it comes to chronic health issues.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what really came out, so the ACEs study, please go ahead and read it. It's published all over the place. You can just go ahead and Google it. It will
there's
pop
great
up.
there's great TED Talks on it I've seen
Oh,
too.
yes.
Mm-hmm.
But essentially, they were able to put together this study of understanding that children and the experiences that children would have could correlate to understanding whether or not they would develop heart disease, diabetes, autoimmune issues. And in the typical, like, oh man, we almost had it, but we made the wrong response, like the whole corporate healthcare system sidestepped, like, oh, we could fix it in childhood, and was like, well, now we just know what you'll probably have. Like, no, it doesn't have to be this fatalist experience where it's like, oh yes, you'll have heart disease, but you are not going to sidestep unresolved trauma. Unresolved
No.
trauma is going to harden arteries.
Mm-hmm.
It is going to cause certain things to happen in your life. I'll never forget that in something that I've been struggling with forever was pre-diabetes. Even when I was incredibly fit, I was struggling with pre-diabetes. And I remember I had a doctor that was like, oh, we can take care of it with metformin. We can take care of it with all these other things. And I was like, I don't understand because I'm not carb heavy. I'm not eating entirely poor. I mean, I had 7% body fat at one point in time. It was pre-diabetic. And
Wow.
I'm like, I can't get more fit. And
No.
I don't know what's going on. And then I'll never forget that, like, and it's come to just recently where I'm not at my lowest weight, but in processing traumas and experiences and doing my own work, that we were doing blood tests and I'm not pre-diabetic anymore. The numbers
Mhm.
shifted by a large amount. And they're like, well, Adam, what did you do differently? And it's like, you're not going to believe it. But no, it wasn't cutting sugar out. But I
Mhm.
feel like my body isn't carrying stress it used to carry.
Mhm. Oh, it's
And
heavy.
it makes sense for me. And I can't tell you I'm going to be able to prove this through a study one day. But like when I can sit here and I can say, like, I know that I'm way more in tune with my body than I ever have been. And I was thinking about this today before I started my sessions with clients, is like, I've had my own business for, it will be going on, well, it'll be 2 years and wait a second. It was 2 years yesterday.
Oh, cool.
It was 2 years.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. And I was asking myself, have you taken a sick day?
Mm.
And
Mhm.
I'm like, I started thinking about it. And it's like, one, I have actually been sick, right? So I have taken a sick day, but I didn't take it because I couldn't get out of bed. I
Mm.
haven't called in sick because my mental health was so poor. I didn't know how I was going to be able to hold space for others. But I can't tell you that that wasn't the case when I was working other jobs in this industry.
Yeah. Oh,
And
yeah.
so when you start having those that you're like, actual sick days are because I was sick, like
Mhm.
it's funny. We don't even think about that in society. You're like, oh, it's a mental health day. Well, wait a second. Shouldn't we be talking about how like my mental health has been so crippled I can't get out of bed?
Mhm.
So what are you willing to survive again? Because survival mode goes, oh, you can burn yourself at both ends and then go ahead and take your week down. And then maybe you'll be able to crawl out of your hole and you can get back to life and you'll be good for the next 6 months.
Mm. That's not good.
No, it's not sustainable.
No.
And what's happening to your body in those 6 months?
Yeah. Yeah, and it doesn't have to be that way. It doesn't have to be
Not at
that way.
all.
That's the good news is that it doesn't have to be that way. We
Yeah.
can we can work through these things and then our bodies are able to release that and it's amazing how much better we feel. I know for me, I was sick all the time. I had the Hashimoto's thyroiditis that was very,
Wow.
very I was not doing well. Let's just put it that way. I was really struggling through that. And I approached it first with diet and
Mm-hmm.
that helped. I did get relief
Yeah.
in some areas with that. But the biggest change I saw with my body was when I really started working through my trauma and, coming to terms with things that I had experienced and being able to process them and then shifting my own behavior and my own responses
Mm-hmm.
to things in my current life and making time for myself again and starting to
Mm.
recognize what I needed and what I wanted and moving forward on that front. That's where I started to see real change. So it matters.
Absolutely does. I mean, so here's what we're talking about in this little section is like, what is chronic pain versus consistent growth? Like,
Mm.
that's really the inverse to chronic pain. Consistent growth doesn't mean it has to be fast or constant where it's like it's all the time. It's just consistent. We're stacking wins in a different way. And when I'm doing that, then I'm starting to look towards hope. I'm starting to
Mm.
look towards actually building a future instead of surviving the future.
Yeah, that's one of the things I had to come to terms with when I started this was that it's not, like you said, it's not exponential, like quick growth, right? And you cannot go into this looking for quick results because you're not going to find them. It is just showing up with that mindset every day. Every day, and it looks different. Some days I have capacity and I can focus on multiple areas of mental health. Maybe I journal that day, maybe I did some meditation, maybe I went to therapy. And then some days all I can do is just try to be cognizant of the conversations I'm having and think about where all those parts you mentioned as I'm going through these conversations. And maybe that's all I have capacity for, but I'm showing up in some way for myself every day. And that leads to big changes over time. And that's the same with fitness. It's the same with health. It's with anything you do in life. What you do consistently is you're going to see impacts from. So carries same way. Let's talk a little bit about support roles. You and I were talking about resources that we could share with other people, and how it kind of ties in with support roles, people that are around somebody who might be going through a situation like this, or is a friend of somebody who has come out of a situation like this. I know for me, I can think immediately of who those people were in my scenario. I had a few people who were with me through it all and wanted to help, even though I pushed everybody like that away. And if you're that person, just know that if you feel pushed away, it's not because your support doesn't matter and it's not appreciated. It is that person's in survival mode. And I'm so thankful that I had those people who stuck by me, even though it was not an easy place to be. They did stick by me. But, what kind of resources we can apply for people who want to get out of a situation or somebody who sees someone in a situation and wants to help?
Well, so before we sat down for this version of the podcast, I had sort of brought some of my ideas to Lindsay, because what's interesting is, I'm imagining our audience is from all over. It's the blessing of what we do as virtual coaches, right? So it's being able to sit here and also go, all right, well, so instead of just going regionally, how about we weed through what some of these things look like and what can be helpful and what can't, sometimes is not helpful. So this comes from my position as a therapist of going, the thing that I hear consistently, or when I was working for nonprofits, like at the street level with people who were, whether they were women and children living in homeless encampments or people surviving domestic violence, a lot of times I heard the hurt of people were so quick to provide me with a phone number to call or a pamphlet. But then when I was reaching out to these places, they weren't accepting new clients, or I couldn't get in for 6 months. And I want to hold space for again, any of us who have seen one of our loved ones go through this crisis, and we have just been like, all I want is their safety. All I want to do is serve them a lifeline. I think we have to take into account that we want to be helpful and not hurtful in this situation. So we have to be very diligent with, and when I reach out, am I going to project onto them shame? Am I going to be telling them what they should be doing? Because if you want to use the word should, you might as well just put shame. Because in your attempt to try to come alongside them, really what you're doing is you're embarrassing them, and then you're undermining them. I can't believe you can't see this. I can't believe that you've waited so long. And I know that I'm using very direct communication. Most of the time it comes out like, you do know you need to leave him. Like, this is not going to get better. He hit you. Why would, you've got to go. And all we're telling them is that, really, wow, I can't believe you're this incompetent. Where if we come at the process more of like, oh my gosh, what are you feeling? What are you thinking? Like, what do you need? Do you need me to just comfort you? How can I help you? Instead of prescribing to them what we feel like they need, now we're in a process of actually being able to receive those hands that might be reaching out and saying, I need someone to sit with me in this. I think that also, if you do feel like, hey, you can ask them like, oh, I just don't have time to call these places. Okay. let me call. Let me see if I can find someone that can work for you. Would you mind if I do that? Most of the time you're going to hear them say, yes, please.
Mhm.
But if you can call ahead and you can find out, oh, wow, they have bed space at this women's shelter. Oh, this program is actively, taking in applicants. Then the resource for you may not be just you being over the phone telling them what to do. It might be you shepherding them all into a car and
Mm.
driving them to a facility and saying, well, I'll just sit out here. Like that could be the biggest resource. We also have to check ourselves. Am I emotionally invested because I want to hurt or because I want to be the hero?
Mm.
And it's going to hurt if you're like, well, can I be both? Well, one's about being a servant in someone else's story, and the other one is largely about wanting to make it about ourselves.
Yeah.
You did not save them. You were a component or a tool or a resource that they used, but you are not their story. And even if you're afforded the position to be in someone's story, realize the honor and privilege that is.
Mm.
You know,
Yeah.
it.
I
What are
think
your
it,
thoughts?
well, in you saying that, in the beginning about, uh, wording it in a way of like, what do
Mm-hmm.
you need? I think one of the neatest things about that is that person that you're talking to is so, the thought of what they need is so foreign to them that you even introducing the idea of considering what they need in that moment is probably really good because they haven't been thinking about that, and they haven't probably even considered what they need. So showing them this outside world, I think that was the biggest help for me with my one friend that would always check in on me. I didn't
Mm.
return her calls, I didn't call her forever. Like she had to try really hard to
I
get a
love
hold
it.
of me and to check in with me, but she didn't give up. And what was really cool about that is that she gave me this little window
Mm.
regularly into the outside world. And like, we're still out here and we still care about you.
Yeah.
And, you know, in the end, it really was huge for me to have somebody that
Mm-hmm.
I could reach out to and know like she had my back and she was there for me. If I needed her in any way, I knew she was there. She didn't inject herself into my situation per se, but she just always made sure I knew that she still cared, that she was still available, and she was there.
Mm.
And she's still my very best friend today. And I've apologized to her so many times for like, I was such a bad
Mm.
friend because I just left her hanging so much, but she was very persistent. Um, and that was really the most helpful thing to me. It was like a lifeline to the outside world
Yeah.
and that perspective of, this, you have somebody, you're not
Mm.
alone.
Yeah, she was it sounds like she did this gracefully, but she was forcing you to come to accept the terms that you weren't alone.
Mm-hmm.
Like especially like you were talking about just leaving the voicemails. Like I know that there had to be moments like you'd see her number come across the phone, you put the phone down, but you knew in 2 minutes it was going to ding with a voicemail.
Mm-hmm.
Like it as no matter how much you didn't want to connect in that moment, you knew that someone was going to choose you.
Yeah.
And what's that like when that builds up? When you're like, no, I do have one person. And I think what I really want other people to listen to when you give us that insight is recognize that her friend wasn't willing to abuse her positioning in a way that would have affected that friend's influence. Like her
Mm-hmm.
influence was silent, but it's what you needed at that moment. I wasn't ready for it. I didn't want to talk about it, but she didn't throw the ultimatum that then would have been like, okay, I have no one.
Yeah.
Okay, I see you, and I'm going to tell you in a couple months I still see you, and I'm going to tell you in a couple months I still see you and love you, and we will work through this as you are ready. I
Yeah.
mean, so as much as we were talking about as you navigate this as the person in it, to not hold yourself to this position of like, oh, it's going to go exactly how I think it is. If you're the person who's trying to be the support, don't think that you understand how this person is going to need your support.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's very conditional, and it's very often that we see that, well, I will support you this way, but I want these from you. Wait a second, that's not unconditional positive regard.
Yeah.
If you're willing to do X because you feel like you're going to get Z, you're just a different form of an abusive relationship.
Well, and the hard part of this is like, if you're dealing with somebody in this kind of a situation, it has to be somewhat selfless for a while.
Yep.
Because a healthy relationship involves two people investing in it, right? But the reality is that person in that situation does not a lot of times have the capacity to invest in anything but their own survival in that moment. That's all they have. And if you recognize that that's the situation this person is in, it really will take having grace on your side for their part of the equation, because they're not going to have it. And if you love them and you're willing to be the one that holds that relationship for a while until they're ready and they have that capacity again, that's a huge person. And I really, like, my friend that did that, I am so thankful for her. And I recognize what she did, because she gave up a lot for that relationship for a long time. Yeah. And it was really difficult for her. It was not an easy thing for her to watch. You know, it was hard. It's hard on those people. If you are that person, you're watching somebody go through something really difficult, but what you're going through is also difficult. It's really hard to watch somebody and not be able to fix the situation. You just have to watch it play out. But it is it's an opportunity for you to give to that person in that moment.
And that's where we have to do that little gut check at times. Am I trying to be helpful, or am I trying to be the hero? That's what it sounds like she was stuck in, is I'm going to be helpful. I'm not going to make this about me. You're right, it takes tremendous insight, because there's going to be moments in all of us that we're like, God dang it, make the right choice, right? Like, this is hard to watch. Like, but that's me getting invested into this process, and then really maybe not being able to pay attention to, am I over leveraged in this process? Like, at times I might need to take a break from this person. Like, oof, it's gotten really heavy. And so people go, well, Adam, that's abandoning. No, it's just, if you recognize that maybe talking to them every week is not something that, again, is mutually beneficial for you, it might be having a little bit more time in separation. Because just being the consistent check-in will matter more than just, the quantity of the check-ins.
Right. Yeah, having personal boundaries in those situations is important too, because it depends on the situation you're in, but you can definitely find yourself being used easily in these types of situations too. When somebody doesn't have a lot of resources, they might not be able to respect those boundaries themselves, and you might have to really hold them. So that could be a piece as well, for sure. So basically what we had talked about, like with resources, is that a lot of times they're local. They're going to be different based off of where you are. And I think I would like to come up with a list of kind of what to look for, where to Google, what to Google for your area, how to find those resources that are local to you. And then we can put that resource in a link below this podcast.
Absolutely.
And, reaching out to people in your area, like Adam, my company I work with, Bristol Bay, has a life coach who helps with just taking care of yourself, daily habits for self-care. She does things like EMDR. I don't know if you want to touch on what EMDR is, but she can do things like that for people all over the country. It's not a local only service. So those types of things are out there, but
I mean, to sort of give a little teaser, before the PDF that we put out, I mean, what I want to empower the person who's going, okay, what resources do I bring to this individual that's in crisis and pain, is recognize that some of the best local resources that you're probably going to find are going to be like women's shelters. There's going to be nonprofits also for individuals that are surviving domestic violence. If there's children that are also in this mix, there's a lot of what we call congregate living facilities. So these are going to be programs that might be 90, 120, 180 days in length. They're going to find a way to house that family unit in an apartment, most likely, and then give mom the skills she needs, along while also treating the children through therapy. There's an amazing one that, like I was talking regionally, there's one that I used to work with in Orange County, California, called the Sheep's Fold, which was their whole idea was basically taking a woman who needed to leave a situation of abuse, and if she also had children, providing them with a 6-month period of helping her develop a resume, finding skills that she could actually utilize, helping her actually set up her first bank account if she had never done that, doing all of these, like, we like to call it like home ec. We joke around a little bit, but it is like, how do I, when I'm in survival mode, did I know what did I know what cooking healthy food was going to look like? Like, because we're so just, nope, just grab the Gushers and the Pop-Tarts. I'm at my max right now.
Mm-hmm.
And so being able to find those ways in, it might also be like going to something like Celebrate Recovery. Celebrate Recovery is something that's all over. It can be for codependency. It can be for a myriad of reasons. But there are a lot of resources out there. Also, I will say my heart, I've always said I love men. It's a big part of my practice, whether it's coaching or it's therapy. There are more men's resources now than there really ever has been. Before, it was really difficult to find men's shelters, because I'm going to share the horrible truth. We call men's shelters homeless shelters. And so we think that, well, for men, they just need to be housed, given some soup, given a shower, and then they need to go to work. Where we're finding more men's programs that are coming out of like missions. So another one in Orange County was the OC mission. But what you can normally find is there's going to be things like the Midnight Mission in LA. Literally look up men's missions on Google, and it's going to pop up with all these programs that, sure, they are going to be faith-based in their attachment, but it doesn't mean that they can't be a resource to be the springboard. Mm-hmm. Also, I think that's a very important thing, is a lot of times in moments like this, when we don't have the answers, we like to go to something that we feel like can give us all the answers. And the thing I would just ask is, don't weaponize faith in this process. Mm-hmm. It's probably one of the most hurtful things you can do when you're trying to be a resource, is telling them, well, if you're a good Christian, Catholic, Muslim, blah, 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 you would do this. First of all, there's nothing that you're telling them that they haven't told themselves. And second of all, that's not, again, going to be a helpful position. You're prescribing to them, if you did this, then I wouldn't have to see it and I would feel better. Mm-hmm. That's a you issue. It's not a them issue.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a struggle. And remember that you're going to call numbers and they're going to say, we don't have bed space, or we're full, or we're not accepting clients. I don't want you to think, oh my gosh, there's all this. Just feels like absolute adversity in life. That's not going to be the dictator of whether the story comes out in a positive manner. What is going to be my consistency. Mm-hmm. I'm going to continue to show up. We'll continue to find ways.
It's the long haul. Yeah, and thankfully there are a lot more online resources coming out that are available for people anywhere, which is so huge. There's a lot of different courses that you can take now that can help with just understanding more about yourself and how your brain and body works. Even things like that can be helpful in healing and processing as you're coming out of a situation like this. So maybe you're waiting, maybe you're on the wait list with somebody local. There's still things that you can do to try to help yourself have something to focus on that's a forward movement, besides just waiting stuck in this spot without any forward momentum.
Absolutely. I always say try to be the person that gives them gentle nudges, but don't push them off the cliff.
Yeah.
That's the basic, like it's okay at moments to be like, oh, I remember what you told me last time. That wasn't something that was very like, you can remind them, you're helping them scale in those moments of like, I'm trying to stay consistent with you. But as soon as you move into the shoulds, or I just need you, what you just said right there. I am now at my emotional capacity. I don't have space to be empathetic for you in this moment. So I need you to just fix yourself because I'm tired of sitting here in the process. It's not going to make them feel any better than they're already feeling.
Right. Yeah. It takes somebody that can be proactive about their own health to be able to be that support person for somebody else. So making sure that you're setting those boundaries that you need to maintain your own care, and then just being there, present for that person, and looking for tangible ways that you can help where they're willing to accept help.
Absolutely.
I love that. Do you have anything else that you want to add to this before we kind of wrap it up? I feel like we went through quite the process of getting all these recorded. It feels wild to be at the end and kind of wrapping it up. What are your thoughts like closing on this whole thing?
You know, I was actually thinking about it before we sat down this morning because I was like, is this going to be the last day? Because we've had to be very intentional in this process as well. I mean, when Lindsay and I first spoke about this, we said, oh man, three Fridays and we're gonna have this thing banged out, right? Yeah. And that was 3 months ago. And so what I felt was actually a privilege in this process with you is recognizing how intentional in creating this content we will also have to be in trying to provide health, like healing in our own lives. Like realize that this podcast and this curriculum went together with experiencing challenges, because life doesn't wait for you, right? When you get healthy, life doesn't go, oh, okay, well then your challenges are over. You're actually going to feel probably and experience more challenges in life because you're going to be more present than you ever have been. What I don't want you to internalize is, oh man, it was great with my head under a rock. No, my body suffered. My whole, I guess, great takeaway from this is I hope that anyone who has been listening and has listened all the way through, that you hear that every time we taped this, we taped it with purpose and with a positivity of realizing this is the blueprint or one blueprint for someone, and being able to find ways to steal back influence in their own lives, in their children's lives, and build a life of purpose. Like none of this is rooted in guilt. All of this is rooted in what could happen. And while it feels so foreign right now and feels so far away, most journeys of 1,000 steps feel that way in the beginning. Yeah. And we talked about this a little bit at the beginning, but the journey to your confidence and the back to who you truly are and your ability to build a life that is full of good things, again, it's going to take a lot of different steps, right? A little bit here, a little bit there, like we talked about, consistently showing up for yourself. And it can feel daunting and overwhelming. And there's going to be those highs and lows where you feel like maybe you've taken steps backwards before you can take more steps forward. But if we look back at what you overcame in the first place, you've overcome something that is way harder than what you're going to have to go through to heal. Even though it's a long journey and there's a lot of steps, there's this, you've done hard things before, and the hard things before left you broken and tired and defeated. And the hard things now are bringing you back and healing you and giving you that strength and giving you purpose and giving you direction. And so it's two different kinds of hard. You just traded a hard,
but it's a hard that gives you a positive outcome and a positive direction versus the one that you were stuck in before. So
yeah,
that's kind of our hope, I think, collectively with this, is that it can potentially be a helpful guide in steps that you can take to transition out of that I'm stuck in this hard place that's making my life miserable, and maybe transition into maybe a hard place, but that's going to bring good things to your life, positive forward momentum to your life.
One is always an investment in myself, and the other one is always going to be a deficit.
Right. 100%. Really, really appreciate you taking the time to come and talk with me all these months, Adam. Thank you for all your input and all your wisdom that you shared.
No, thank you for letting me be a part of the process. Like I said, it was just an honor to be able to sit here through this and being able to say, like, okay, we've gotten to here. It's created and it's here, because I don't think any of our stories are our stories to keep. And that's why I loved that thought process you had. And I said, no, this has to get out there in front of people. How can I help do that? But just the courage you had to say, hey, we're going to write this blueprint. We're going to put it out there so that the next person who is seeking can find it.
Thank you.
I appreciate you. Thank you, everyone.
You too. Bye.
Bye.